Hello, my beautiful friend. How are you? I am doing well. I am back from the last travel of the summer. And so I feel okay. We are going into fall. I don't have travel plans in the immediate future. So this is kind of nice just to say, okay, that was the last travel. Summer's kind of winding down and fall is kicking in. And it's a gorgeous time of year here in San Diego. If you ever come to visit San Diego, please look me up, hit me on Instagram or Facebook, and love to meet you live. I just love meeting people who listen to the podcast, and we are like minded and kindred spirits. But if you ever come to San Diego, I have to say August and September, and even into October, are the best months of the year. I would say hold off coming in May or June because we just don't have great weather. People always complain that they're buying sweatshirts and hoodies and they just don't expect it to be cooler with our marine layer and the May gray and the June gloom. But really, this time of year, oh, so delicious. I can't wait. We're going to be hanging out at the beach this coming weekend. Just really looking forward to some time with the family here in San Diego, the city that I love. And another great thing is after this podcast, I get to go watch my daughter play flag football. She is on her high school flag football team and just loving it. It's turning out to be her favorite sport, and just watching her run down the field and score a touchdown is so, so exciting. So I get to do that after this podcast. Well, if you are a local in San Diego, I want to just throw out, hey, if you want to look and network with a group of great women, I will be speaking at an upcoming event next week. It is with the Women in Networking group in North County, and I'll be talking about breaking the cycle of negative habits and really transforming our habits to build resilience and health, and how we can do that. So I will be giving a talk at Shadow Ridge Golf Club in Vista, California next Wednesday. And if you are interested, there's a link in the show notes. I'm also going to have my team send out an email as well if you want to come see me live. I would love that. Also, I'll be talking at another event, but that's more of a panel discussion in San Diego as well. So reach out to me if you're interested in that. That'll be later in the month. And then also, while I was traveling, I put on hold, which I'm bringing back now, is mastering menopause and mastering our metabolic health. So it's really geared for women in midlife, and it's all about fixing our broken metabolism. So we are getting started in that program. So if you want to join us, I invite you to come check it out. I've made some updates to the page that you will see on my website, and I've also made some updates to the program. So I've been doing a lot of reading in my travels. I mentioned a great book that I read when we were in Spain, and I actually am having the guest come on to talk about her book, Dark Calories, Dr. Kate Shanahan. Amazing book. I had a lot of this data already in Metabolic Makeover, but she's highlighted a couple of things that I didn't know. So I'm making a few tweaks to the program regarding that, because these are important information to have to fix our broken metabolism. And that's exactly why many of us gain weight, whether you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it all comes back down to our metabolism. And so when I talk about metabolism, which actually I'll be getting to deeply into this conversation today, it's really talking about how we use food and drink and what we take in to process into energy so that we can survive. So we are getting started inside of Metabolic Makeover. So if you want to join, come check that out. We are going to actually be looking at lab work. So I offered it to a few people who were interested in the past, but really, I really want everybody to get lab work done. You can do that through your health insurance if you need to, or if you need me to order it, I can order you labs, and we can really dive in to looking if your metabolism is broken or not. So the lab work is the most objective measure we can see to really identify. We can go by your symptoms as well. There's like 10 to 20 classic symptoms of a broken metabolism, but really the lab work gives us where you've been. And I'd like to see that improve over this 10-week program. I was going to just jump into the podcast, but let me just say if you want to join this week because we're getting started next week. I am currently sending out welcome packages. So if you are interested, hurry up and sign up so we can all start together. You can trickle in later if you want. If you're traveling or now is not a great time, you can trickle in later. That's fine. It's just more cohesive when we all get to start together. And so if you really want help losing weight, want help preventing diabetes or getting rid of type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, this program will help you do exactly that. You'll also have more energy. I will tell you, the women that have gone through this program have said, oh my gosh, I didn't know how bad I was feeling until I started feeling so much better. I didn't even realize that some of my brain fog and low level energy was coming from the habits that I was doing that wasn't supporting my most optimal health. So if you're interested, come take a look at that on my website, epicu.com, and then you can just click on work with me. There'll be a drop-down menu where you can get to metabolic makeover. So with that, I'm going to dive into a little bit more about how to fix our broken metabolism. And this is a huge, huge topic. I have mentioned on this podcast several times in previous episodes that the data that came out in 2022 said that 93% of Americans, adult Americans, were not metabolically healthy. We're not metabolically flexible, right? So to me, that's like our metabolism is broken. It's not optimizing. It's not working at an optimal level. So part of the whole reason I put together metabolic makeover was not just around hormones, but around the big hormones that really drive our metabolism, our insulin, our cortisol, our thyroid, right? Not to mention the sex hormones, right? Which a lot of women have questions about because they're confused. There's so much conflicting data, and I get that. So I want to set the stage clear for you, right? Answer your questions and let you ask me anything you need so that you can be sure or really have a good, clear understanding of if you want to start them, how to do it, which ones are the best, which ones cause the least amount of side effects, right? All of that. But before you even get there, right, it's the three master hormones that we have to look at, because even if you replenish estrogen, testosterone, or progesterone, you're not going to feel amazing if your three classic big priority hormones are not optimized. So this is why we look at blood work, right? We want to know if you're in the optimal ranges, not just good. I want my women to feel amazing, optimal. I want them to feel epic, right? That's the whole notion behind Epic You, is feel as epic as you can, as long as you can. That to me is an amazing life. When you have enough energy to do the things with your grandkids, your kids, your family, when you have enough energy to go to work, when you have enough energy to do these things that make us feel human, that make us feel happy, that make us feel amazing, right? Nobody wants to be sick, laying in bed and not feeling amazing. And I think there's so much in the allopathic model, the conventional healthcare model, that they don't address at all. It's like a pill for every ill. And they just want to write you a new prescription and a new prescription and a new prescription. You know, I just had that happen to me like 3 weeks ago. I went to see my doctor and I was talking about some of the symptoms and just wanted to write a prescription. And I'm like, but that's not going to get to the root cause. I know what the root cause is. Like, can you give me any other tips? And of course not. So, I had to do my own research and figure out things on my own. And it's the sad state of affairs, really. If you are sick, yes, go get healthcare. It's not even called healthcare, it's sick care in our country, right? They're not designed to keep you healthy and optimal and functioning healthy. It's about treating an illness, right? You've got this condition, we're going to give you this surgery or this pill. And so I really want to help women understand, right, things to keep them healthy so they don't need that sick care model, right? Or they could prolong it as long as possible. So with metabolism, I mentioned the definition that I'm using is really we're looking at all the things we take in, meaning food and drink, and how our cells convert that to energy, right? Once your cells convert and make energy, then you can do all the processes, right? You need this biologic process to stay alive. And the more energy we have, the better we feel. So when we're talking about a broken metabolism, we know 93% of adults in America have a broken metabolism. They are not metabolically flexible. So now let me define metabolic flexibility. I have in the past, but just as a summary, you are metabolically flexible when you can burn both sugar as well as fat. You are not metabolically flexible if you cannot burn fat. So 93% of people are not metabolically optimized where they can burn fat, which means we have an obesity problem, which means we have an insulin resistance problem, which means we have a problem generating energy, right? We're taking in food and our bodies, instead of using it or storing it as fat and then being able to burn the fat later, it might be just storing the fat and not being able to burn the fat later on. So we just become these reservoirs for fat storage. So when we're flexible, we can alternate between the two, right? And that's ideally what we want. When there's food there, great. We use that food and that fuel as fuel, and that is our energy for our body. But when we're not eating, and in times of like famine from the past, when we were not eating, what did the body do? The body was smart, right? It said, oh, we got these times where we feast. We got these times where we're in famine. And when we're in famine, we're not going to die. We're just going to store and utilize those fat stores that we made while there was feasting time, right? So it breaks down our fat. And so we want those pathways open to break down that fat so that we don't keep storing more and more and more fat. And the most dangerous type of fat I mentioned in the past is visceral fat, right? Some people call that inflammatory fat. Some people call that belly fat, right? There's all kinds of names we can call it, but it's really visceral fat. It's the fat around our organs. And after it fills up around our organs, it generally seeps out into the beer gut, right? Around our bellies, or women will call that my menopause, right? Because oftentimes it starts to accumulate in midlife. Right. So around the time of menopause or around the time of andropause for men, we start noticing that fat can accumulate not only around our organs, but also right in our central area. And that's the most dangerous type of fat. And I've talked about why that is on previous podcasts, right? It's super inflammatory. It also doesn't help secrete and produce enough leptin, which helps us, part of our hunger hormones. So we're going to be more hungry. We're going to be craving more sugar. It's going to be an area that type of fat has more cortisol receptors. So it's going to lead to more stress. It's going to be harder to metabolize, all of the things, right? It stores more estrone, which is a type of estrogen, which again, more estrone that's stored can lead to more toxicity for the body. The list goes on and on and on how dangerous this type of fat is because it's inflammatory. So it's setting up our inflammation pathways, which is why we might get achy joints. We might have dysbiosis in our gut and leaky gut, right? Because of this inflammatory cascade. So we want to make sure that we are part of the 7%. And that really is my goal with metabolic makeover, is that we take adults that are in that 93% and we convert them to being part of the 7%. And oftentimes on the calls, you'll hear me say that, like, all right, ladies, we are part of the 7%. What are we doing? What do we still need to work on? Because you want to be part of that 7% because you're going to feel and look amazing. I mean, we all want to look amazing, but we also want to feel amazing. We don't want to be just faking it till we make it. We don't want to just be doing all the things and be so exhausted and so wiped out that we can enjoy our life. And so metabolically flexible, that means we can shift between fat storing and fat burning. A lot of us are good at the fat storing. Not many of us are good at the fat burning. And so it's natural for the body to burn fat. How does the body burn fat? How does the body burn fat? A lot of people say just exercise, and that is not true. That's one way. But I'll tell you really what it comes down to. The fat needs to be burned, needs to be utilized. And what part of the body does that? The mitochondria. So the mitochondria is the powerhouse of our cell. It's oftentimes called because that takes in food, water, fat, whatever, and converts it to energy. So it's our mitochondria that burn fat. So if you have dysfunctional mitochondria, you're not going to be able to burn fat. So people are like, well, how do I know, right? Well, We know things that impede fat loss. We know things that damage mitochondria. We know that if we take in certain toxins, they damage mitochondria. So, a big one that we know about and that I've talked about for years on this podcast is alcohol. Alcohol is a direct mitochondrial toxin. And that makes sense, right? If you think about somebody who drinks a lot of beer and then they say, oh, they have a beer gut. Well, of course, if you're not able to burn fat because you're drinking too much alcohol, where's alcohol? Where's all that fat going to get stored? In the gut, which is why a lot of people who come through drink less lifestyle, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm losing weight now that I've cut back on my alcohol. Some women come through the program and say, I'm not losing weight. I'm surprised. I'm like, well, that's because you're probably got other mitochondrial toxins that you're taking in, and it's not just alcohol. So if it's just alcohol and you cut back on alcohol, right, and you lose weight, it's oftentimes because your diet is fairly clean other than the alcohol. If not, and you're cutting back on a lot of alcohol and you're not losing a lot of weight, well, there's other things that are toxifying or being toxic to your mitochondria. So other things include seed oils, right? I have Dr. Kate Shanahan coming on to talk about that and exactly how that happens and exactly which seed oils. It's not all of them. It's just the Hateful Eight, as she likes to call it, in her amazing book. And so she'll be discussing that. And that is the information I put inside of Metabolic Makeover because this was newer information to me. And I want to make sure that you have the tools when you enter that program so that you get the weight loss and you get metabolically healthy. Metabolically healthy, we're going to talk about what that looks like. And I want to just preface right now, because I want you to hear it several times, because I think women need to hear it more than once. When we're talking about metabolic health, ladies, we are not talking about the number on the scale. That is not something we use in the program at all because the number on the scale is meaningless. It does not tell me how healthy or unhealthy you are, right? I don't even look at BMI. And I can go into all the reasons why that is not an ideal measurement. We have other measurements that clearly tell us if you're metabolically healthy and ability to burn fat. Those are not it. So I will say it again when we get there, but definitely don't look at the number on the scale because it's not going to tell you much. It might be meaningful to you, but it's not meaningful in terms of a health parameter that we're going to look at in your metabolic health. So going back to toxins to the mitochondria, anything that damages the mitochondria is going to slow weight loss, is going to slow producing enough energy, is going to slow burning the fat. And here's the beautiful thing. When you break down, your body then produces ketones. So your liver will help burn the fat and produce ketones in that process. And ketones are the number one energy source for your brain. So you are sharper. You get rid of brain fog. It is amazing when you start to burn fat, how much your brain and your cognition are on fire. They are lit up because it's way better than sugar as a source. Do we need sugar? Yes. Do we need carbohydrates? Yes. Right? Our bodies do require some of that for optimal health, but not a lot. It prefers ketones. Ketones work much better. So we want to be switching between a sugar burner and a ketone burner, right? We want to make sure that we are stoking those fat stores and burning them so it melts off of our body. And the mitochondria are one of the biggest factors that help us lose fat. We all want to lose fat. We don't want to lose muscle. We don't want to just lose water weight. We want to lose fat. And so we need the mitochondria to do that. So we talked about alcohol. We talked about seed oils. Of all the sugar types, I just listened to Peter Attia's podcast. He did an excellent podcast on this. I'm a member and a subscriber, so I got to listen to the whole thing. And he talks about, and the research does support, that of all the sugars, fructose is the most fattening. So if you're limiting any type of sugar in your diet, you want to make sure it's coming from fructose because that is going to be the most fattening of all. That puts on the most weight. And then we have environmental toxins, right? Things that we breathe in our air, nanoplastics, microplastics, all the things that we drink in our water, right? There's obesogens in our personal care products. There's obesogens and sometimes the shampoos and the lotions and the potions that we use on our bodies. So we want to make sure that we follow clean, right? Products as much as we can. so that we're not, again, causing congestion and toxins to the mitochondria where they don't function. They just don't work because they're damaged and we've damaged them. Charred meat is another one. Anytime you char meat, that's a damage to the mitochondria because any oxidative stress, and we get really into that in Kate Shanahan's interview that will be coming out later this month or next month, talking about how that process works and exactly why it's so toxic and inflammatory to the body. And it really is the cause of so many chronic diseases. So we really want to protect our mitochondria. We don't want to give it any toxins. If we've got any toxins, we want to detoxify the body, right? There are processes that we talk about inside of metabolic makeover that we can detox those pathways so that you are burning fat. And again, this is not just to get skinny, this is to get healthy. I am not a toothpick running around. I don't desire to be a toothpick running around anymore, but I do desire to be healthy for as long as I can. So I want to meet these metabolic metrics and keep them in the optimal zone for as long as I can. I'm there now. I want to stay there next year and the year after and the year after and the year after and the decade after, and hopefully the decade after, as long as I can. I want to maximize my health and my energy. Okay, so metabolic flexibility is really the holy grail of metabolic health. If you have metabolic flexibility, you're unlikely to get type 2 diabetes. You're unlikely to get some of these big diseases that stem from mitochondrial dysfunction and inflammation. In Kate Shanahan's book, we talk about a lot of the diseases that just keeping your mitochondria healthy, you prevent so many long-term consequences. There's also stats now that's showing that millennials are seeing their health decline faster than previous generations. And generally, they start noticing it around age 35. Because of our toxic milieu, our food supply is more toxic than maybe my generation. When I grew up, we weren't putting all this processed food out there. We weren't having so many chemicals in our food. The air quality has gotten worse. The stress has gotten worse, right? There's so many factors that millennials are not having the same benefit as my generation did, right? Gen X's. And so they're starting to see the impacts on their health much earlier. And the rise in childhood obesity and insulin resistance is insanely disgusting, in my opinion. I mean, the free food at the schools is just don't get me started, right? I don't even let my daughter doesn't even want to touch it, but goodness, I know it's free, but it's not healthy. It's a lot of that stuff being offered are mitochondrial toxins to our kids, to our kids. And so when we're looking at the rise in diabetes, when we're looking at the rise in health and healthcare costs keep going up, right? Because we're getting sicker, we're getting sicker. We're one of the few nations that, has spent so much on healthcare. It's really tragic. It's really tragic. So if we're not going to learn it from our schools, if we're not going to learn it from the people in conventional medicine because they don't have the time or the energy or maybe even the knowledge to teach us, I think it's up to us to learn this information. Not just for us, but I'm learning it so I could teach it to others, like women who I work with, my clients, my family members, my extended family, anybody who wants to learn how to keep their health for as long as they can. I'm willing to chat. It's one of my favorite topics. So, looking at avoiding bringing that into the body because they're going to be mitochondrial toxins. And so they are going to damage our mitochondrial health. So, when you switch and you are metabolically flexible, when you become part of that 7%, you can now switch easily from sugar burning to fat burning. And that's really what we want. We want to melt the fat off where our bodies just don't need it. We don't need to store it. These aren't like prehistoric times or the old days where, we wouldn't have access to food for days or weeks on end. And we've got plenty, actually an abundance of access to food. Access to good food, I question, maybe not in all areas, but we definitely have access to food at our fingertips, right? So we don't have to worry we shouldn't have food insecurity. Of course, some people do, right? Depending on social economic status and all of that. But really, we have this abundance of food. So our bodies just haven't updated their software yet, right? So we don't need to hang us on to as much fat. But a lot of us, what do we happens if we're eating the wrong types of food? Then we're not getting the right hormonal balance and our hunger hormones become off and wonky. And then we become hungry or hangry. And we tend to be over hungry and then we eat too much and then we become over fat and under muscled and under fueled. Underfueled because our mitochondria are saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. You're not giving me the fuel I need. You're giving me these toxins that I can't do anything with. I can't even break them down and makes me sluggish and tired and not want to work. And so you're going to be craving and starving the brain for the nutrients that it needs. So we become over hungry and then we overeat and then we become over fat because we're not able to burn the fat off of our bodies. And so that's the problem I want to help you address or people address if they are interested. So when your liver converts your body fat into ketones, oh my gosh, your brain feels amazing. You have so much more energy and it feels great. A lot of people can induce this by doing intermittent fasting, right? You will notice a big shift. Eventually, at first, you might get the keto flu that they talk about because your body is like, oh my gosh, I've been used to burning all this sugar, sugar, sugar. Now there's sugar's not there. I'm not eating. And you get a lot of symptoms. You can get cramping, you can get headache, you can get really tired, maybe even needing naps. That's all part of the keto flu because your body's not used to being metabolically flexible and it's not used to breaking down its own fat stores as a source for energy. But once you get through that, then your body's like, oh, here's my energy source. Here's how I remember how to do this process. I haven't had to do it in a year or 2 or 3 years or however long. Now that I've learned it, this is where I feel amazing. And it's that honeymoon phase a lot of people feel when they get through the rough phase. And then at the end, on the other side of it, they feel amazing because the ketone production and how it makes us feel. So when you aren't metabolically flexible, some of the things you'll notice, you will have cravings for sugar. You will want snacks. You will want to be eating every 2, 3 to 4 hours. It'll be hard to stick to just 3 meals a day. It will be almost impossible to feel like intermittent fasting is an option because you'll be hungry, you'll be hangry, you might get jitters, low blood sugar. That's another sign. So there are signs to signal to you if you are metabolically flexible or not. And so here's where I want to end the podcast is really looking at the big 5 parameters that tell us if we're part of that 7%. So I mentioned this on the podcast in the past, but these are the 5 parameters that they looked at in that 2022 study that said 93% of Americans are not metabolically healthy because they have a derangement in one or more of these parameters. And those parameters include blood pressure. If you have elevated blood pressure and on a blood pressure medicine, right? That means if you stop taking the medicine, you would have elevated blood pressure. So elevated blood pressure is a marker for you're not metabolically flexible, right? You're not able to burn fat. It's probably due to you have some inflammation going on in the vessels, right? And as the vessels become tight and as become inflamed, they're less flexible. And that leads to more tension. And so blood pressure increases. So blood pressure, I'll just run through the others quickly. Triglycerides. Triglycerides are a big problem. We're seeing triglycerides go up and up and up. We're seeing more, it used to be called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or NAFLD, or now it's called MASLD, right? So metabolic disease, because when you are not metabolically flexible, your liver will suffer. For sure. And we're seeing so much liver damage and liver failure now due to unhealthy diets, toxins in our diets. And so those numbers are on the rise. Triglycerides give us a good indication of your diet in the parameters as well as your metabolism. HDL is also a marker of metabolic health. So we would look at your HDL as well. Your fasting blood glucose, this is an excellent measure, but there's one that's even more excellent and another one that's even better than the other one I'm going to recommend. So if you want me to run your labs or you're going to get it done by your insurance, I would definitely say fasting blood glucose is very good, but we also want a fasting insulin. If your doctor can write for that and check that, that would be great. And then we can run an HOMA IR score on you. And that really is a gold standard where we can really assess what your metabolism is doing. So those are tremendous metrics that you want to be staying on top of. And besides that, then we have waist circumference. So notice of those 5, I didn't mention the number on your scale. And this really is for the ladies, right? Because they're really locked into that number on the scale. If that number moves down, I feel healthier. Well, maybe that number moves down, but maybe your health level didn't change. And I've seen that because people lose the wrong type of weight. People aren't getting healthier mitochondria in the process, right? So there are ways you can lower the number on the scale, but not necessarily translate to better health. So I know a lot of people love to monitor their weight on the scale, and I'm not going to say don't, but I'm just wanting to point out that it may not be, and I don't believe it is a great marker for health. It's a marker, but it's not the best markers that we talked about for metabolic health and really assessing your disease risk for the future, right? Are you on track to stay healthy? Or are there holes or in things that are starting to look a little worrisome that we can get back on track so you don't worry about any downstream chronic diseases? And that's really, really an area that lights me up on fire, is really walking you through your labs, really understanding. You want to measure cortisols, we can do that. I can order those tests for you inside the program. It's just really exciting so that you stay metabolically healthy and you can be part of the 7%, because we all want to live strong, healthy, active for a very long time. All right, my friend, I hope you found this podcast useful. If you feel somebody would benefit from this information, please share this podcast with a friend. I would love to get more listeners. I'd love to get more of this information out there. I'd love to see a healthier population and really be part of that movement, right, through a health revolution. So if anybody would benefit from this podcast, please share it with a friend. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to like and write a review, rate it, like a review, and make sure you follow me so that you could get every podcast episode, because you won't want to miss some of the amazing speakers and guests that I have coming on the show in the next couple of weeks. And if you really are serious about losing weight and getting metabolically healthy, being part of that 7%, come check out Midlife Metabolic Makeover, and I can help you inside there. All right, my friend, so good to be with you this week, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Health Habits and Epic Living podcast. If you're ready to take the next step to improve your health, wellness, and lifestyle goals, head over to www.epicu.com and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Again, that's EPICYOU.com. Please note that the information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice.